Welcome to another How to Grime video, and in this video we're talking about mixing grime vocals. Now, quick disclaimer before we start, I'm by no means claiming to be a professional mixer or a master mixer. I prefer to actually outsource mixing to people who've been doing it for years and have mastered that craft, that art. But if you're a beginner and you don't know where to start and you're on a budget and want to do this at home, there's a few home mixing tricks that I've picked up over a year of doing it and trying it myself that I'm going to share with you in this video. It will be a good starting point to mixing yourself, but like I said, I suggest you outsource your mixing for better results. But if you're just looking to get started, learn the basics, then this is the right video for you. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it. Welcome to the juicy part of the video, and we're going to begin the mixing process. Now, I recorded this example verse in this video using a Rode microphone that I got on Amazon for about £196 at the time, and M Audio Air audio interface that I got for about £88. Now, you can record great sounding vocals using cheaper equipment just as long as you know what you're doing, right? So don't worry if you can't afford, you know, a really good mic or £100 mic or £200 mic. And if you can afford better equipment, I would say go for it, because the biggest part of getting a good mix is the recording, right? You can't fix a really shitty recording using plugins. It just doesn't happen. So you need to make sure you get the recording right above everything. But let's get straight into it. Now, the first thing I like to do when I'm mixing is set the volume levels, right? So bring the volume levels down to a level that's not too loud but not too quiet, and that makes the track sound, you know, just right. And I like to start with panning, you know, panning the layering vocals, which are these vocals here, to the left and to the right, so that they're out of the way of each other and out of the way of the lead vocal, and it sounds better. So let's just listen to the track, and as we listen to it, I'm going to be leveling it and panning it. On the DAW that I'm using, which is waveform 11.3, right, you simply press the M to get the mixing settings up, and let's start leveling this up. Yeah. Okay. Cause I'm in the lab, no open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If he's acting like swine, then I'm slapping a guy. He's looking, not liking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's sweeter than gravity. Trapped in the chase of the pleasure and sanity, running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the back of me. Anarchy, that's the right word to describe my anatomy. But let me take it back to the rapper G. Cause conscious rap, no, you don't wanna hear none of that, right? Okay. Cause I'm in the lab, no open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If he's acting like swine, then I'm slapping a guy. He's looking, not liking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity. Right, to me, everything sounds, you know, pretty good there where it is. So now we move on to the very first plugin, and the first plugin I like to use is simply EQ, right? We like to EQ the track. Now the EQ, we're going to use just the standard EQ that comes with this DAW, this free DAW, which is waveform 3. And with EQ, it's really good for removing any frequencies, any sound that you don't like. So any muddiness you hear in your track, any, you know, high S's, any sibilants, any screeches, anything that you don't like, any sound that you don't like, you use the EQ to get rid of it. And you can also use the EQ to push your layering vocals into the background, make them sound like background vocals. And to get the EQ up on waveform 3, you go on this grey plus sign here, you drag it down to to this band here of the track that you want to mix. So for me it's track 2, and you go to waveform plugins, you go to effects, and you find the standard EQ, which is 4-band equalizer in this case. And I just simply start by removing the low end, because that's where all the moddiness is and all the crap that I don't want in my track. So let me remove that low end real quick. Yeah. I also like to solo, the track that I'm mixing, so I might mute the other 2 layering vocals. Okay. Cause I'm in the lab, not open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. This looking not hacking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity, running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the Cause I'm in the lab, not open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. This looking not hacking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity, running away from the tragedy, trying to... Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And the next plugin I'll use is a compressor, right? I like to EQ, compress, then EQ again, and then compress again, right? That's the way I like to do it, just my personal preference, right? Now, compressing, is just to level out the sound, right? Make it sound very level. So all the really loud parts of the vocal, they will get quietened down a little bit with the compressor, and all the really quiet parts, they might get boosted a bit. Now with this compressor, if you don't understand compressors, it's okay to use plugins. I mean, not plugins, presets, right? Instead of fumbling around, use some presets, right? If you want to understand compressors a bit more, there's plenty of videos on YouTube teaching you this stuff, and I could make some videos, explaining the basics, because like I said, I'm not really an expert at this, but I understand the basics enough, to get a decent sounding vocal. So let's use some presets here. Let's see what presets sound good. Cause I'm in the lab, not open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. This looking not hacking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity, running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the back of me. And the key, that's the right word to describe man after me. But let me take it back to the rapper G. Cause conscious rap, no, you don't wanna hear none of that, right? And I like the sound of that. That sounds pretty good for me. Now remember, the goal of the compressor is just to make the vocal sound a lot more even and level, right? Okay, now the next plugin is, like I said, another EQ, and this one we're gonna go with EQualizer. Now EQualizer and some other plugins I'll leave in the description, because they're free plugins, and if you're starting out with home mixing and the basics of home mixing, these free plugins will help you. So I'll leave them in the description for you so you can use them. Alright, now with EQualizer, you go on presets and you go on mastering starter, which brings this screen up, allowing you to mess with the vocal a lot better. So let's Cause I'm in the lab, not open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. This looking not hacking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity, running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the back of me. And the key, that's the right word to describe man after me. But let me take it back to the rap. You want to really find the frequencies that you want to change, any frequencies you don't like, you want to get rid of those frequencies. Any frequencies that you want there, you want to boost, and the EQualizer is really good for doing that. So what I'm doing here is just raising certain parts of the frequencies, so the low end, the mid range, the high end, to find what I like and what I don't like, and what to get rid of and what to keep. Just rap, no, you don't want to hear none of that, right? Lab, no open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. guy. He's looking, not hacking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to read, that's pretty good for me. And now another compressor, and this time I'm going to use the M compressor. Now this is one of the plugins that I'm going to leave in the description for you lot, because again it's a really good free plugin, really good free compressor for you to start out and use. So with this one, I like to use a preset called Master 6. I like the way it boosts the volume of the vocal, but while keeping it level and while removing anything, you know, that you don't really want to be hearing. Cause I'm in the lab, not open the trap. It's a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. He's looking, not hacking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity, running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the back of me. And again, that's the right word to describe man after me. But let me take it back to the rapper G. Cause conscious rap, no, you don't wanna hear none of that, right? Alright, now I'm gonna mix the layering vocals. Now I'm gonna just quickly skip through this. You don't really need to see much of what I'm doing here, because just doing simply most of the same stuff you did with the main vocal, but not as much, because the goal of the layering vocals is to complement, you know, the main vocal. You want to mix the main vocal the most and spend the most time on that. Once you got a really good main, the layers just spice it up, you know what I mean? They're just really good for spicing it up. So I'm gonna quickly mix in layering vocals, you know, not put too much time and explanation into that, because they're not as important as the main. That's all you've got to remember. So quickly, 4-band equalizer, obviously solo it, and again, whatever layer vocal you're mixing, solo that, so you can purely hear that and focus on that. But again, I'm going to quickly skim through this. You don't need to worry about this part too much. Like I said before, I'll tend to use the EQ to make these layering vocals sound like they're coming from the background of my main vocals, so that they just complement it, you know what I mean? Alright. On the track. I'm in the lab, no whip in the trap. It's a pen in the pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, I'm slapping the guy. He's looking, not hacking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity, running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the back of me. And again, that's the right word to describe my mentally. But let me take it back to the rapper G. Cause conscious rap, no, you don't wanna hear none of that. On the track. I'm in the lab, no whip in the trap. It's a pen in the pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, I'm slapping the guy. He's looking, not hacking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the So now with this layer vocal, last, instead of going EQ compressor, I went EQ compression, and then now EQ, just because it sounded a bit different for me, and I thought, you know, I ought to focus on compression first before I finish off with the EQ. So now I'm gonna use the M equalizer on this layer vocal just to finish it off. Now with the layer vocals, I like to use the preset called voice, and what that looks like is this right here. On the track. I'm in the lab, no whip in the trap. It's a pen in the pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, I'm slapping the guy. He's looking, not hacking his thighs. And that's it for that layer vocal. On to the next layer vocal. No more equalizer. 4-band equalizer. Unmute it, mute the rest, listen to it as it's the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the on the track. Cause I'm in the lab, no whip in the trap. It's a pen in the pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, I'm slapping the guy. He's looking, not hacking his thighs in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Then once I've mixed the layer vocals, I will play each track, all of them all together, see what I can tweak, see how good they sound together, see if one needs to be, you know, messed around with a bit more than the other, or if they just fine. So let's hear that real quick before I move on to the next part of this mixing tutorial. Cause I'm in the lab, no open the trap. There's a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. He's looking, not liking his stars in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity. Running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the back of me. Anarchy, that's the right word to describe my anatomy. But let me take it back to the rapper G. Cause just rap, no, you don't wanna hear none of that, right? Cause I'm in the lab, no open the trap. There's a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. He's looking, not liking his stars in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity. Running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the back of me. Anarchy, that's the right word to describe my anatomy. But let me take it back to the rapper G. Cause just rap, no, you don't wanna hear none of that, right? Alright, now this is where all the magic happens, this next part of the mixing tutorial. Now what we're going to do is add reverb, right, which gives your vocals a lot more space and adds another dimension to them that, you know, other plugins just don't add. So it's a really important plugin to use. Now the best way to use reverb, in my opinion, is side chaining, using an aux send and an aux return on waveform 3, because, you know, it makes the reverb sound a lot better. All right, so you're going to go to the empty track here, track 5, and you're going to go on waveform plugins. Instead of effects this time, you're going to go to utility and you're going to click aux return, right, and you're going to set up your aux return there, and you're going to leave it as return 1. Now over here on your vocal tracks, you're going to go to track 2, same thing, waveform plugins, utility, but this time go for an aux send. So you're sending the signal to the aux return track in the empty track, and you're going to repeat that for the other ones. And you might want to call the second send send 2, but I'm just going to leave it for the sake of this video. And then you're going to do the same for, obviously, for all the tracks. Now once you got your sends set up, all you're going to do on this empty track, on this empty bus, is get your reverb. Now you can either use the standard reverb that comes away from 3 or whatever DAW you've chosen to use for your mixing, or you can use the free reverb old school verb plugin that I'm going to leave in the description once again. Or it's all up to you. Alright, so I'm going to be using old school verbs for this one. And hold on, let me test something out. Cause I'm in the lab, no open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. He's looking, not liking his stars in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But yes, right, one thing I've got to mention, the send should be behind all the plugins and the return should be before all the plugins, right, if that makes sense. Okay, so we're gonna add a reverb here, and with the reverb you're simply gonna tweak it to a level that you like. So let me play this. Okay. Cause I'm in the lab, no open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. He's looking, not liking his stars in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. And another neat trick, this is why I like this aux return, aux send, you know, way of doing it, is in this empty bus here where you've got your old school verb and your aux return, you can add an EQ and actually equalize your whole track, right? This is almost like a mastering technique, but we're using it, you know, to further mix a track. So I'm going to add equalizer here and try to equalize the whole reverb. So I'm going to cut the low end off so that the reverb doesn't sound like a big rumble coming out, or, you know, of the track. Instead it sounds clear, crisp, and adds the effect that I want to hear.
Okay. Cause I'm in the lab, no open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. He's looking not liking his stars in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity. Running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the back of me. Anarchy, that's the right word to describe my anatomy. But let me take it back to the rapper G. Cause conscious rap, no, you don't wanna hear none of that, right?
I like the way that sounds. So now I'm going to add an M compressor just to compress the reverb and compress all the other vocals, you know, from this track right here. So in this one we're going to go for master 6 again, and let's hear how this sounds. Let's see how this affects the vocals.
Cause I'm in the lab, no open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If it's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. He's looking not liking his stars in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity. Running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the back of me. Anarchy, that's the right word to describe my anatomy. But let me take it back to the rapper G. Cause conscious rap, no, you don't wanna hear none of that, right?
Alright, I'm pretty happy with the way that sounds. Obviously a lot more could be done, but for a basic level of mixing, this sounds pretty decent, right? So I'm gonna leave it like that. But one more thing before I go, I'm gonna bypass all the plugins, alright, just to show you the before and after, right? How it sounds with and without the plugins. So let's hear that.
Okay. Cause I'm in the lab, no open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If he's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. He's looking not liking his stars in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity. Running away from the tragedy, trying to erase this demon.
Alright, I've heard enough. You can hear that it sounds muddy, it doesn't sound as clear, you know. It sounds pretty much all over the place. But now if we enable all the plugins again, the mix should sound a lot better. So let's hear this.
Okay. Cause I'm in the lab, no open the trap. Use a pen and a pad to express all the bad in the baggage I carry in the back of my mind. If he's acting like swine, then I'm slapping the guy. He's looking not liking his stars in the back of his spine. Every time that I rhyme, I feel something divine. But then when it's time to go back to reality, I feel the weight of the pressure that's greater than gravity. Trapped in the chase for the pleasure and sanity. Running away from the tragedy, trying to erase these demons at the back of me. Anarchy, that's the right word to describe my anatomy. But let me take it back to the rapper G. Cause conscious rap, no, you don't wanna hear none of that, right?
Now, like I said, there's a lot more that could be done to that, but it does sound better than the original, and I hope that gives you the basics of mixing and helps you get started. Feel free to use this DAW that I've used in this example video. I'll leave that in the description. I'll also leave all the other plugins that I mentioned in this video in the description. And before I go, I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone that subscribed. We've hit 1,000 subscribers, so cheers for that milestone. Make sure you hit that bell notification if you are subscribed, so that you get a notification every time I release a video. But with all that being said, like the video, share it, subscribe if you're not, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Chasing my dream, that's a mental test. Taking out teeth on a dental flex. Them is spit bars, instrumentals blessed. Roll up a suit, that's essential, yes. Cause this was fucked, this a mental mess. I want to be monumental, yes. Everywhere gone influential guest. So I meditate G, take a gentle breath. Keep my mind clear like a tempo, yes. Then I write bars that I'm meant for fresh. This is the path that I went for, yes. Your lyrics are daft to pretend or flex like you were the best. Cause I'll get vengeful vexed. Clip your legs and bend your neck. Send you home in a rental stressed.